Hello and welcome to SEOcharity event with Angie Nikoleychuk and Anton Schulke. Today we're going to talk about behavioral science for smarter SEO. And if you see us, please say hi in the chat. And I pass the word to Anton. Anton, tell us why we're here. You're muted.
That's absolutely true. I was muted. Hi guys, I'll only take a couple of minutes. I'll explain what SEOcharity is all about. It's SEO and charity. We try to rely on trust we hopefully have with SEO community to bring SEO people to help cats and dogs small shelter in Ukraine. We're currently helping 5 small shelters. When I said small and not very small, the family way of doing so cats and dogs, they're not in cages, they're basically inside flats and houses, and it's about 300 plus animals we're helping right now. So we're trying to collect money. SEOcharity exists for 3.5 years, almost 3.5 years, since March 2022. We have collected all together donation and sponsors money. We do interested in both. We collected about $80,000 so far. Well, this project never stops. It's not like we got some particular goal and we stop. We're happy about that. Not we're happy every day, but we need money every day because cats and dogs, they need food and medicine. And it's all yours. It's all yours, Angie and Alyssa.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say very quickly a few words about Angie before I pass the word next again. Angie is someone who is very rare in SEO space because she's got this very kind of rare, again, knowledge in behavioral science and actually a psychology degree and lots of extensive knowledge. So you won't want to miss this presentation in any case. Also, Angie is the content marketing manager in Search Engine Journal and has written a book, Search Within, Using Consumer Behavior to Power SEO. This is what I'm going to read next. The book of this June. So, and I advise you to do as well. So, and Angie has lots of experience in the space, and I've seen the presentation, and her approach is wonderful. So you won't want to miss it because it's something that will be still working with AI introduction and further on, and it is already working at the moment. So please tune in and join us. Listen till the end.
Thank you so very much. So very much. So yes. I'm Angie Nikoleychuk. I'm the former behavioral data analyst and content marketing manager at Search Engine Journal. I've got about 20 some years in the SEO industry. I have a cognitive behavior degree in psychology, and I'm about to start my PhD. So that's kind of a quick rundown of who I am, I guess. So I have a ton of things I'd love to talk about today.
Okay, I'll bring in the presentation.
Oh, yes, she's threatening to jump up at this very moment. So her name is Cleopatra. So she is a rescue. She was supposed to be a dog. I went to the shelter to get a dog, and I ended up with her instead. So
I've added up the presentation. We can jump.
Yes. Excellent. So I'm not sure if we'll actually get to all of these today, but I thought just in case I get nervous and I speed through something, we've got some extra content. So probably one of the biggest problems I see with traditional SEO today is there's a significant misinterpretation of intent. So we tend to assume that there's 4 major types, right? So informational, navigational, commercial, and transactional. And Google, on the other hand, particularly with its quality raters, tends to use an alternative 4 types of intent: know, do, website, and visit in person. But the problem with all of these things is that at the end of the day, they don't really mean much. There's this great, big, huge, messy middle. I want to say, I think it was Adobe did a study a while back that was mentioning something like 62% of search doesn't, or not Adobe, SEMrush doesn't actually fall into one of these four categories. And the problem with that messy middle is that it's actually growing as AI is beginning to take over. And there's a ton of different reasons for that, right? People go between phrases, between phases, they go back and forth between a tense, they click on multiple tabs. I mean, how many of us have a bajillion windows with a bajillion tabs in them, right? So, I mean, there's no, as much as we would like for it to be a really straight path, it just simply isn't. And the main reason for that is because it's driven by emotional and situational factors, but I'll get into that in a minute. Um, SEO has traditionally relied pretty heavy on keywords, but we look at keywords almost as if they're their own little world. We never actually look at them in context and in context with the search. We choose those keywords by using really oversimplified personas. We have, SEOs and the industry as a whole generally doesn't tend to take in a lot of the psychological drivers of search, which means we end up focusing a lot on search engines, not on people. And even when we attempt to focus on people, our segmentation is usually um, pretty narrow banded, and it tends to fall into funnels that we don't actually use all of that much. I mean, when we get right back, like when we get right down to it, we all know what's happening in the industry, right? Like, I don't have to tell you that like all of the patents that are coming out are very, very, very user heavy. They're not so much functional anymore like they used to be. Um, Algorithms are aiming at satisfying now rather than like actual satisfaction. And what I mean by that is Google has been moving towards this thing where they are looking to satisfy users only to a point. It's an economics term. So they're looking to satisfy users who are searching all the available alternatives only until they find the first result that meets a minimum acceptability threshold. That's what's happening. They're not looking for the best possible result anymore. They're looking for the one that's kind of like good enough, if that makes any sense. AI as well. I don't want to get into this too much because every man and his dog has been talking about AI, and in all reality, we don't actually know anything. But I can tell you that from my experience and the way I've seen it working, um, chat tools like Chat GPT and all of the others, I'm just going to say Chat GPT for ease, they have actually changed the way searchers are approaching search. So if you think about traditional search, for example, you can kind of think of that like a librarian who goes to a card catalog and she sifts through and she finds, the 10 best books or the 10 best links that might satisfy. That's no longer happening. With ChatGPT, it's more like a research assistant where they don't actually care what those links are. They are actually delivering that information to you in like a really nice, easy, digestible way. And as long as the user is confident enough in that information, they aren't gonna like fight to go through to your website, right? The other thing is we've switched from keywords to conversations. So users are no longer, well, I shouldn't say they're no longer using, but they're starting to move away from basic, keyword searches, restaurant near me type stuff. They're very slowly starting to shift to context rich questions. And with that means that they're thinking more deeply about what they're searching for. And that's leading to a process that's like really nuanced and really contains a lot of personalized information for the query and the context that they're asking it in. As a result, users are very much like a passive explorer. And even when you look at how ChatGPT and traditional search are designed, they are specifically designed that way. They are specifically designed for those two types of search. If you go to a Google, like you go to the Google homepage, for example, it's very minimal. There's literally a box and a button, and you type in what you want and you go, right? When you open up ChatGPT, it's very conversational with you. It has a larger chat box. The way the whole tool itself is designed specifically for what I call a what now user. So they find something and it's what now? What do I need to know next? They're already worrying about the rest of the steps. And so that's kind of what I've been sort of watching anyway as we go through. Of course, SEO today is very, very heavily reliant on cultural factors, social, global factors. So, the economy hasn't been great. A lot of people are getting laid off, so maybe they're looking for more ways to save money and not necessarily the best price, right? There's a lot of, say, generational slang. So, my grandkids, for example, will use totally different language to search for something than I do. Consumers' concerns have also changed pretty drastically over the last 5 to 10 years, right? So we have a lot more privacy concerns. There's a lot more attacks. AI is making things really difficult. Overall, the whole world itself is shifting considerably. So what is behavioral SEO, or how am I defining it? Essentially, I'm defining it as a very specific approach that focuses on understanding how and why people search, engage, and decide. I'm not as focused on matching, exact keyword phrases and trying to be seen. I'm more worried about what are they doing at the time. Behavioral SEO starts with people's situations, emotions, and motivations, and then you build content and experiences that naturally support those things. That's essentially what this kind of strategy focuses on. So what exactly is a searcher looking for? So again, we're taking all of these things that are happening in and around their lives at the time, and we're boiling them down to tasks, emotional pain, and curiosity. And your searcher essentially wants to know, this is the task I want to complete. How do I complete that with the least amount of emotional and mental pain or discomfort and still satisfy my curiosity for that topic? So there's a ton of reasons, psychologically wise, as to why somebody searches. They could be looking to avoid pain. They could be looking for comfort in some way. They might be willing to simply be looking to validate their thoughts or beliefs on something, or their information that they have on something. They might be openly exploring. They might be dreaming and kind of planning of a future, fear of missing out, or they could simply have an urgency or a deadline, and searching is their quickest way to meet those needs, right? And there's a ton of stuff that goes into that. But here's just one quick example. So every time somebody searches, or every time somebody makes a purchasing decision, they're using one of two kind of like systems in their brain to think. The first one is system one thinking, and that's very rule of thumb, snap judgment, instant kind of stuff, right? Like if you go to a store and you're waiting to pay for something, you go, ooh, candy bar, right? That's your system one. And the same thing happens now in the SERPs, right? We have featured answers, a ton of local SEO content, things that are very direct, scannable, and have minimal friction from, ooh, that looks good, to actually getting into it. System two, I've got an error on my slide, sorry. System two is very high effort thinking. That is things like buying a house, buying a car. In the SERPs, that's things like product comparisons, looking for in-depth guides, webinars, very research heavy, anything that requires a lot of thought. So as you kind of look through your keywords, that's kind of one thing to keep in the back of your mind. Before I do...
Hey, what will we do when we have no longer keywords to look into? For example, with more AI and all these kind of things.
I mean, I'm using kind of keyword research pretty broadly here, because people are still looking for things. They're still using conversational queries of some sort, right? So will you be trying to rank for keywords? Probably not, but you will be looking to meet the user's need, if that makes sense. So you'd still have to have some kind of way of measuring and tracking and kind of planning that kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So before I do anything, one of the first things I start with is what exactly is my audience doing? That's kind of like my consumer personas or my search personas or whatever you'd like to call them. Those are the core of absolutely everything I do. And now we all know the whole, marketing Sally who's like 25 years old and this is what she's interested in, right? I hate those. And if I could burn them all and ban them from the internet, I absolutely would. There's nothing good about them. First of all, they're based usually on nothing but demographic data, which means that you are making assumptions and acting on stereotypes most of the time are not accurate. If you do get a little bit into the weeds and more in-depth stuff, that stuff is always based on industry-wide data or worse. It's almost always second or third hand. There's just nothing good about that kind of stuff. So I start with context and I try to look for if this is my product. So if I'm selling a weight loss product, for example, I'm looking at everybody and all the various reasons as to why somebody would be searching for anything that has to do with weight loss products of some kind. And I'm not just looking at the who, but I'm looking at the context that surrounds them when they're making those searches. So here's a really good example. You have a tired parent, it's late at night, they're looking for different ways to lose weight, right? If they're using the query, how to lose weight quickly before a wedding, that tells you that there's a ton of information hidden in there, right? You know that it's urgency driven, it has a deadline, it's something very emotional for them. So, they're very sentimental driven. If they are searching using healthy, sustainable weight loss tips, that's a totally different story. In that case, you're looking at a searcher or somebody who's looking for a much longer term commitment, or at least is open to a much longer term commitment. Very different mindsets, very different ways of marketing, very different ways of SEO, of aiming at them with SEO, very different phrases, the whole 9 yards. Those are two completely different worlds. Essentially, when you are looking at all of these different people that might be using your product or service, you're looking to answer kind of four main questions. What problem are they trying to solve? How much effort are they willing to put in? What kind of social or emotional needs are driving the searches that they are currently making? And what might make them abandon that search, that task, or double down on it? And there's a ton of different reasons as to why somebody might do that. I have just a few of them here. So their decision style, again, is it impulsive? Are they risk averse? Is it data driven? Are they searching alone by themselves or in a group? Like, are they looking for something very private, like a weight loss product, for example? Or are they looking as a group, like, hey, my friends and I want to go out to a restaurant or something like that, right? Situational motivators, there's a time bias as well. You will find that absolutely every single individual on this planet and will always be either future focused or present biased. Now, they might not be future focused for everything, and they might not be present biased for everything, but every time they make a search, they're going to be one of the other. Future focused means that they are willing to forego kind of like some immediate dopamine hit or like some immediate success if it means that it's going to pay off for them in the future. And that is because in that regard, with that search, they believe that their personality is very malleable. Present based is very much in the now. They're looking for immediate satisfaction, immediate payoff. Again, very, very different search worlds, very different sets of keywords, very different strategies. And again, risk aversion. So risk here, when I say risk aversion, I don't just mean cost or security. I mean time investment, all of that kind of stuff, social, all of those types of things. So when I'm building a persona, the first thing I do is I go wherever that audience hangs out, and I am scraping and gathering as much possible data as I can find. So when I worked at Search Engine Journal, for example, one of the first things I did, we had a target audience, and one of the first things I did was I went to pull up spontaneous media interviews and personal blogs that those people, that kind of like exemplars of that audience had written. We went through all kinds of feedback and discussion forums, everything, and I gather all of that data into place, and I essentially run it through various machine learning and AI. And here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for pain points, motivations, and language patterns. So are there common phrases or emotional language that they use a lot? Are there contextual triggers? So every time, or most of the time, when this audience searches for a weight loss tip, what is happening at that time? Did they just get rejected by somebody? Are they, in a clothing store and they couldn't find clothes that fit? Or, what was happening around the time that they were making the search? And you can find that because a lot of time they'll be like, oh, I was just looking for a X, right? And that's a really, really good contextual trigger. Value drivers is another thing. So what do those people kind of look for when they are typing in the queries you're aiming at? Are they looking to signal something? So if I'm searching for Rolex, for example, I'm not looking for a Rolex for personal satisfaction. That is very, very much a social cue to other people about the type of person I am, or the type of person I want to tell you I am, as well as, what group in the world do I belong to? Because let's be honest, not all of us can afford a Rolex. So if you're searching for Rolex, like, you clearly belong to a specific group, right? And the other thing is experience or knowledge that they have about a topic. So it doesn't matter what topic or what product or service or information you are trying to get out into the world. The amount of experience that a searcher has with that topic will very, very clearly determine the words and the types of information that they are looking for and the types of things that they will click on. So an expert, you guys as experts in SEO, to really make this obvious, would never ever type into a search bar how to start with SEO. You don't need to. You are well beyond that. You're looking for algorithms, data gathering, all of that kind of stuff. Your language is changing as your experience with SEO has changed and grown. And then I throw all of that into various frameworks, and that pretty much enables me to do pretty much anything with marketing and SEO. I go into some of these in my book. I won't go into all of them here. Some of them I go into a bit later. So all of that, doesn't matter what you're targeting. We all know that eat and trust are like number one, right? Regardless of what you're doing, that's like really, really important. And that has changed a lot as well over the last few years. What hasn't changed about it, though, is fundamentally how we understand trust and authority. So I kind of pulled this quote. I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset that from now on, I can't believe you.
And we must show it to Amon Jones. He wanted to see Nietzsche on the next session, and here we have it. I'm sorry, Angie, but I find it very funny that we have it now.
And it's in my book. I actually pulled this right from my book. So we all know that trust and authority can be broken so easily, right? Outdated designs, inconsistencies between the headings and the page content, lack of transparency. So, if I click on a medical article, for example, and it doesn't have any author name, it starts looking a little sus, right? I have aggressive pop-ups and intrusive ads, and that is a very big debate. I've run several experiments, and I don't know, it has an effect, but at the same time, they work very well. So that's up there with a caveat, I guess. So trust, we all know, we all talk about explicit trust. SEOs focus a ton on explicit trust. Everything from SSL certificates to like having, bringing in actual doctors for medical content. And that stuff is all very, very important. But I think a lot of times as SEOs, we forget that there's other types of trust. So we have implicit trust with people, right? I trust Anton because he and I have, communicated a lot over, a number of years, and he has always been a wonderful person to work with, right? That is very, very much an implicit trust. On the page, when you're dealing with strangers, that might kind of translate into things like, a blog with a very casual sounding tone that uses words that makes it sound like you are just like me in some way. You're very honest and you're very helpful about that. And every time I come to your website, I get that same feeling and I get good results. Again, personal trust, like Anton, built from direct experience. This is, again, a little difficult to do online, but essentially repeat visitors, right? And then there's social trust, which is one that I think a lot of people kind of miss out on. If my friend trusts a makeup product, for example, I am more likely to use that makeup product, right? We all know how that works. Social proof, right? If I go onto Reddit and a particular user always has very insightful things to say about a topic, I actually start to trust that person. Very, very social in that way. Authority, again, there are very different types that we often don't think of. So expert authorities like professionals, institutional authorities. So in the real world, that might be a university or a government. In, the online world, that might be a brand, right? Social authority, so influencers, celebrities, and situational authority based on relevance to a specific situation. So parenting's in a parenting for a forum, a sufferer of a specific disease, like say a cancer sufferer in a cancer forum, those kinds of things, situational authority. And to build those things up, we essentially look at four main things. These things are consistent. It doesn't matter how things change, whether you're in the real world or not. These four things are very important. Authority. Do you seem knowledgeable about what you're talking about? And consistency. Do you always seem knowledgeable about that? And does that not only match what you've been saying, but does that match what I know about the topic, right? If I've woke up every day and the sky is blue and suddenly you tell me the sky is purple, it doesn't matter what authority you have, I'm already questioning that, right? Clarity. How easy is it to understand what is happening when you tell me something? And tone. Do you speak to me like a professional and like you're coming from a good place? Or when you speak to me, do I think that you're trying to trick me into something? Those four things always matter. And again, we judge those in all kinds of different ways. So familiar domains, recognizable brands, the presence of an author, the tone of voice, how your content is structured, whether or not your site has been built in GeoCities. All of those things all make a huge, huge difference. Here's four kind of like big ones that I run into a lot. Your headline overpromises and your content fails to deliver. The ultimate guide to X, and when you go into it, it's literally like 4 bullet points that I've been hearing for the last 30 years. That's not going to work for me. I get a tone of an ad that's very friendly and approachable, or I click on a link that sounds very friendly, approachable, and sounds very informational. And then when I click to it, I get something very cold and corporate that doesn't, answer my question, and essentially it's selling something to me, right? Or the visual design of a site that signals that this brand or whatever is very professional and very established. But then when you start going through the content, it's pretty clear that that person has never been in that industry before and has no idea what they're doing. Happens all the time. So keyword research, that's kind of where everybody traditionally starts. And as I had kind of mentioned earlier, in response to Alessia's question, I use keywords, but not generally in the same way that most people do. The reason for that is because as much as this SEO, the industry loves its tools and its numbers, users do not think in search volumes, and they don't care what the tool thinks. Their priorities are their questions, their desires, their needs, and their emotions. That's it. They don't care about you. So this new approach is very much on understanding the audience segment's context, motivations, and the language that they use as a result of those things. In other words, I use keyword research to learn how to think like my audience so that I can then develop and optimize for those people. And again, I'm essentially looking for 5 main things. I want to identify the trigger. What event or emotion made them search in the first place? I want to define their urgency level. Is this somebody that's willing to read through and take their time before they make a decision? Or are they going to be buying like within the next few minutes, right? What kind of mental or emotional state are they in at the time? Are they anxious? Are they hopeful? Are they frustrated? Are they excited? I mean, sometimes they're just neutral. But if you can kind of pick out what the little emotional tidbits are, you are miles ahead. You have all the language and everything you need, like everything you need to know from that cue. Are there external influences? So if you are selling SaaS, if you are selling SaaS to another business, for example, let's say I'm selling an SEO tool to a SEO manager. If that SEO manager works in a larger company, they have to answer not only to maybe their clients of some kind, but they also have to answer to their boss, right? Their boss is going to want to know why, what's the ROI of that tool? What makes that different? How can I use this tool, or how is this tool going to make me look good to my boss for that next promotion, right? So it's very, very different. If that SEO manager is searching at home, there's a totally different set of things. Maybe they're not as concerned about what their boss is going to think or what their client is going to think. Maybe it's for a side project, right? So you have to pay very, very close attention to that. And you have to be able to predict what their expectations are. What are they looking to get from that search, right? So here's an example of situational content. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll just go through one. But, what to do after a job interview. A lot of times, you'll get all of these great big anecdotal evidence and all of this emotional stuff. And to be honest, when somebody is when I get out of a job interview, I am nervous. I'm like thinking back about everything that I said. I'm looking for good advice and checklists and things that confirmed that I did the best possible job I could. Audience language. So, for a time tracking piece of software, why does every time tracker feel like a punishment, right? That tells me that in that search, their tone and experience of that searcher matters, right? So in that case, I might be looking to target something that says, time tracker that doesn't suck, right? Might be a really good ad, might be really good terms to kind of aim for, those kinds of things. Oh, whoops. Decisional triggers and emotional drivers. Again, are they upset? Are they, looking for a specific feature? simplicity. So I just want to hit the button and go. In other words, that person is looking for software that just does the basics. They don't want all of the extra stuff. In that case, I want keywords and I want them going to pages that just get them to the basic piece of the software and doesn't, carry on about all of the extra features and things that it would be very, very nice if they paid for. But right now, in that moment, they're just looking for the basics. Human-centered language. So again, there's a ton of platforms that you can find user-generated content. I don't have to tell you guys this. You guys know where it is. But here's what I'm looking for. So for an email marketing strategy that I was working on at the time, I could use automated email marketing for beginners was a good one on Google. Whereas on YouTube, email marketing on autopilot was way more prominent, right? So that kind of gives me a good idea of where users are hanging out, which types of users are hanging out there, and the types of phrases that I should be kind of looking to aim for. And when I have all of that kind of stuff, I take that and I cluster it together by scenario and intent. And I will then name these clusters. So freelancer who just lost an invoice in their inbox, for example, or the curious newbie just starting a freelance life. Very specific to what they're looking for, the types of triggers, and then the phrases, keywords that they are searching with and using. And it's only then that I go to the SEO tools and I pull out the various data. Now, I've just used this as an example for ease, but, again, all of the basic things that we have been doing, but it's only at this point that I'm actually starting to go into the tools and map them back to all of the phrases and things that I've come up with. And then I prioritize it and away I go. So once I have all of those keywords, I start to map them to intent. Now, again, marketing funnels. Everybody keeps asking me, how do I map my keywords to the marketing funnel? What do I do with the ones that don't fit in there? Marketing funnels are horrible. Again, they were great when they originally came out, but they don't tell you anything, right? So the awareness portion of a funnel is very much about orientation and discovery, but awareness doesn't tell me anything. So in order to do that, I go back to my situational content. Again, people don't always enter from the funnel from the top. They can enter at any point. Single users can switch mindsets multiple times throughout the day, the week, sometimes even in the same search. Funnel stages alone do not count for mental availability or emotional readiness. So, I might be at the final stage, but I don't have enough mental capacity to be making that choice at the moment. I want to go back and reassure myself first. And again, real-time behavior. So search terms, bounce patterns, device usage, all of that stuff can tell me what kind of situation I'm in. So when I'm mapping my keywords, I've kind of put together I've kind of expanded or kind of tweaked what we call a traditional funnel. And along that funnel, each section has its own kind of specific content type, its own specific frame and format. And I use that information to figure out where my keywords fit in. So at the exploratory awareness phase, which is traditionally top of funnel, right? You're going to find blog posts, how-tos, explainer videos, those sorts of things. Tone for that kind of content and those types of keywords, very friendly, helpful, high level, right? Evaluative consideration, again, product comparisons, in-depth guides, webinars, like very information heavy stuff, very detail rich. We want a really nice balanced tone, that kind of thing. So again, basically take all of the keywords, all of the phrases and everything that I've gathered, and I'm plugging them into this stuff based on where they sort of fall on the expectation of the user. So situational content I've mentioned a few times, but I haven't really kind of gone into that. Situational content is content and keywords that address a very, very specific set of conditions, triggers, and pressures that are swirling around the searcher at the exact time that they are searching, scrolling, or deciding. So that could be a time pressure, an emotional state, the complexity of a task, decision importance, social context, all of these things. All of these things kind of go into account here. And I'm looking very specifically at, this is the user I want to capture. This is what they're looking for. This is the story that I want to tell them. So Morty Oberstein is actually really, really good at this. He's got a ton of content on this kind of stuff. Again, very social context dependent. You want to, in terms of our weight loss example from beginning, the searcher who wants to lose weight before a wedding, right? There's time pressure, emotional state, task complexity, because that's not easy to do in a short amount of time. Decision importance. You can bet that that decision is way more important to somebody who is trying to lose weight before a wedding than somebody who is just trying to make a lifestyle change, for example. It might be important, but other things might bump that out of the way. So all kinds of things to kind of consider when you're sort of figuring out what that user's story is and what that segment's story is. And here's some ways that you can kind of find this in your data. So users who use words like urgent, fix, best, now, those are really, really good time sensitivity indicators. You know, they're clearly looking for something that's very short and actionable. If you have somebody who's using a mobile device and on the weekend, you know that it's probably casual browsing, right? So in that case, they're probably looking for something very light, something very fun and kind of interesting to read, those kinds of things. So in total, in this whole funnel, you're going to have 5 types of content for each kind of situation, each audience that you're kind of aiming for. You're going to have crisis and urgency content and search terms. These are the things that provide immediate value, prominent CTAs, and have trust elements, because those are going to be your biggest challenges on a very quick system one kind of click, right? You need exploratory content and search terms. These are ones that have low barrier to entry, very broad overviews of topics. Maybe they have interactive tools, some kind of explainer video, something that gives them that information that they are craving. You're going to have just-in-time or micro moment content and search terms. These are quick comparisons, summaries, bullet points, things that users can very quickly reference and make use of either during their day or while they're making a buying decision. Then you have supportive or internal sell-in content and search terms. So these are things that might help answer certain concerns, answer certain questions that buyers at the bottom, or what we typically the bottom of the funnel, will typically have, right? And contextual personalized journeys. So once I have figured out who is searching, how and why they're searching, and I figured out the terms that they're using for, I'm taking those and I'm literally mapping those all the way along into a full journey, so that from the moment they click an ad to the moment they buy, that whole thing has been very specifically catered to their journey. And what happens is, as they come in and out of that journey and in and out of that funnel, if you will, they will always come back into that journey somewhere along the path, back and forth, until they either fully abandon or actually convert. To do that, I'm essentially grouping things, again, like I mentioned before, by cluster, query pattern, using search data to identify content opportunities and common pivots. So, for example, users who are searching for site speed tips, and they click their pricing, you know that your journey, you need to kind of strengthen that journey between those 2 points, right? I look for analytics. I look at my analytics for drop-off points. I happen to notice that, all of my traffic sort of comes in at the beginning of my customer journey, and then all of a sudden they just kind of drop off and I lose them. I kind of watch for that drop off point in that journey, and I'm looking to see, do I need to clarify the message, change the tone? What kind of mismatch is happening there? And the other thing is that I'm making sure that these customer journeys that I'm building for my keyword strategies and for my customer journeys are very, very flexible, right? So they allow for that very quick conversion for low effort deciders, but they have a lot of decision points. And I'll kind of show you how I build that in with CTAs here in a minute. So that brings me to on-page behavioral SEO. This one is I think most of us have the basics of this, but it's essentially designing your site psychology in mind, meaning that you are considering how people are making their decisions, and you are making that as easy as possible, right? So everything from the actual search result all the way through to your CTA, again, is creating that content journey is all very specifically designed for all of the stuff that you discovered during that customer persona and during your keyword research. So headline and intro, subheadings for structure, we all know this stuff. Design elements, I'm going to mention that it matters. There has to be a very visual hierarchy to your site. If you don't have it, you can SEO to your little heart's content, and it's not going to work. Adobe had a really good report out a little while ago that said 38% of everyone who lands on your website will stop engaging the moment the layout or the content becomes unattractive or hard to navigate. So this stuff matters. CTAs, this is the one I want to mention to you. CTAs are not a cattle prod. You cannot use them to push somebody down. They are a decision point. And that means that your CTAs must feel logical, accessible, and emotionally safe. So your user has to trust you when they get to that CTA, or it's not going to happen. And also the way you structure your CTAs on a page is going to matter. So if I am building a landing page for ease of use, the primary CTA for the audience that I am designing that page specifically for goes above the fold. I want that to be one of the first things that person sees. After that, I start adding secondary CTAs. These are things that as I build trust and demonstrate value to that user, I will add these in after each major information block. And they will cater to a slightly different variation of that main priority. And then contextual CTAs. These are the ones that address concerns and questions for anybody outside of that core persona. So there's a quick little extra tidbit. And here's an example of that work in action. So if I am selling SaaS software, for example, my primary CTA might be start your free trial, but my secondary CTA might be something like compare plans, right? And then I'll have contextual CTAs that kind of hit all of the other situations and the other types of audience segments. So see the features, test drive this out, look at pricing, all those things that are kind of out of scope, again, of that initial kind of audience. Internal links, we all know this. I just wanted to tell you that there's actually a really good scientific, psychological reason for internal links. And most importantly, it's because they allow us to explore, to kind of enter an exploratory pathway. Because humans love chunking and they love breaking really big things into little tiny pieces. So internal links like see how our dashboard works is going to be far more effective than try our software. So I just thought I would throw that in there. Finally, I have measuring all of the stuff. I kind of developed what I call the 7 psychological KPIs for conversion optimization that I kind of use with a lot of my websites and with a lot of my SEO, it helps me kind of figure out what the data is telling me about the user. So first C is clarity. Does the user understand what you're offering and what to do next? So if I'm not sure if that's happening, I'm looking at scroll depth on FAQ sections prior to clicking a conversion point. I'm looking at scroll depth across information heavy pages. I'm looking at interactions with tabbed content, expandable sections, or comparison charts, right? I'm looking at clicks on help icons, tooltips, those kinds of things. And when I am designing, or if I'm working with a company to build landing pages or to build a website or to optimize a site, these are the things that I'm making sure that we are including, not just for the user, but also for diagnostic purposes. Just thought I would put that in there. Comfort. Is the user feeling emotionally safe and familiar on the site? So this one is a little bit, but there are ways that you can kind of get a good idea of how comfortable your user is with your site. Are they returning to the same page? Is the average time spent on a product or service higher or lower? Does their scroll slow down, or do they hover over comfort zones like trust badges, FAQ pages, guarantees, those types of things? Is there low bounce rates on repeated sessions? Now, this one is a little, I mean, we all know the debate over bounce rates and those kinds of things. Do I use it as an actual, like, 100%, yep, this is what's happening? No, but if you put it in context with everything else, it can help you answer this question. Confidence. Is the user becoming more sure of their decision as they spend time on your site? So I am looking for clicks on testimonials, reviews, social proof, comparisons of price tiers, time spent on about pages, contact or guaranteed pages, and interactions with chat bots, particularly in that pre-question page. So if I'm troubleshooting keywords or SEO strategies that are falling in that pre-purchase phase, those are the things I'm looking at. Curiosity. Is the user showing any desire to explore or learn more while they're on your site? Internal links is huge. Related links, that has been getting less so, but it's very, very industry and website specific. Read more expansions is another really good indicator. Search site queries, that's a pretty popular one, I think, that a lot of us use these days. Interactions with interactive tools, that's very industry specific. But are they exploring and interacting with things, with visual elements on the site, like image carousels, product zooms, tabs, those kinds of things? Again, if I am building a website with somebody, or if I am consulting with a company, those are things that I suggest to them, not just for the user, but for diagnostic purposes. Commitment. Is the user making small progressive steps towards conversion? Newsletter signups, downloading gated content, save for laters, account creation, social shares, direct visits, all those kinds of things all matter. Control. Users absolutely want to feel like they are in control all the time. It doesn't matter what psychological processes you use, what type of SEO strategies you use. Your user ultimately wants to feel in control, even if they are not. So, can they filter and sort? Are they able to choose their own path? Are they backtracking up and down through a journey back and forth? What are their exit rates after they complete a form or a CTA? If they are all of a sudden getting to a form and they are exiting, it is happening too far or too early in your conversion process to happen. So that kind of slinks a little bit more onto the marketing side, but I think it gives you a really good idea of sort of what you're looking to complete as you start your SEO. Closure. Did the user complete their goal and feel emotionally resolved? So rage clicks, exit after goal completion, short time to conversion. Are there looping behaviors? Are they returning back and forth between your conversion point, like your purchase point, and your FAQs, for example? What's happening with support tickets, right? Is that page, is your chatbot really busy on that page? Those types of things. And with that, that's kind of a really big, huge general overview of behavioral SEO. In essence, traffic spikes are nice, rankings are cool, but if you want to create content that truly connects, you need to measure with the emotional and behavioral fingerprints your visitors leave behind. And with that, that's my presentation.
Thank you so much. It's awesome. And may I share my screen for a really short period of time, if you don't mind? While we were talking, there was Benjamin from AI. So he talked about time tracker and how people might be searching, and he's got the database of how people actually search in ChatGPT. So I decided that it would be fun to share that sometimes there is no even keyword like time tracker, but there's a particular problem that they want to solve. Can you suggest me applications that improve time management and productivity? And if we to expand what the ChatGPT answers to them, it will list the brands, and among those brands, there are time trackers. So I will not do that right now because it's user data. I don't know if I can do that. So just, but I found it pretty funny and interesting that, something that you can.
Yeah, I find a lot of times there's absolutely no keywords. Like, it's always phrases that I would have never, ever considered. And I will admit that sometimes that has gotten me into some pretty heated discussions because, somebody will say, hey, I want you to do keyword research. And then I come up with all of this stuff that doesn't seem relevant, right? Until you.
It is relevant because person will go and buy that because it's proposed in the chat and it solves his problem or her problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, like, traditionally, we're looking for time tracking software, best time tracking software. Like, we have that whole keyword mindset, right? So I find a lot of times with clients, that's what they are expecting to see. And then when I deliver, they get something that is very, very different, right? So it's been really interesting to see.
But could it reverse engineer it? You ask ChatGPT, for example, give me a phrase which you will, when answer, you will be talking about this software.
Yeah.
Is there any chance of this kind of thing?
I don't, for the very specific reason that some tools like ChatGPT kind of like seems to keep a very specific kind of pool of information that it knows about you, right? Like, if you've ever asked ChatGPT to describe you, it knows a lot of things it is not supposed to know. And I'm just going to leave that topic right where it's at. But I mean, when you ask it those questions, it is going to customize that for you, right? I would very, very much rather go exactly right to the person who is doing that searching and look at their language that they're using. This way I don't have to worry about guessing and I don't have to worry about whether or not it's accurate.
Interesting.
Another problem that I think might be appearing is that we are talking a lot about customer journeys on our own websites. But with this agentic stuff and browsers powered by agents, people might have no need to go to our websites anymore at all. So
Yeah. 100%. I cover that in my book. I actually have a section about that where I'm like, look, we are getting to the point where we might not actually ever need websites. Google or like the search tool will need websites because it wants to steal your content.
Or maybe they need API connection about our data and they create website in their own browser for the user that they like, and it is easier to navigate for them. So maybe we don't need these websites.
Yeah, I actually got into a pretty heated discussion about this quite a while back, probably about 6 months back. The only thing that I think might stop that from happening is that we need to, as users, we need to be able to verify that information. Even if we don't actually technically verify it, having that second source indicates that that information is accurate. It gives us confidence in the answer. Even if that answer is horribly wrong and totally made up, right? But it gives us confidence in that. And I think that if we are no longer going to websites, I think we start losing that. And that puts us into a very, very unstable situation from a psychology standpoint, but also from a brand standpoint, right? Because we've all know, like, Google is suppressing certain types of searches, or, like starts making you wonder whether how much it is actually tailoring that answer and how much it's actually suppressing. And that kind of puts companies, like, I mean, I'm getting very like conspiracy theory, but I don't think it can happen in that way and still work, is essentially, I guess, that's the conundrum I run into when I start watching that kind of stuff and we start going down that track. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there may be actually many approaches to solve this kind of problems. I think we'll have something. We had lots of stuff people are proposing now, from pods to APIs to Chamber of Commerce listings, where you can actually go and verify, and bureaus, and I don't know, whatever else. So I think that not necessarily. So, because there are lots of websites out there which have reviews, and all those are fake.
Yeah, 100%. There's a whole, like, again, like when I go to a search result, I'm looking at things. I had mentioned something the other day to John Mueller about how, like, if we're no longer seeing the .ca or the country code in our URL, and I'm looking for information on the Canadian election, for example, I'm a whole lot less likely to trust that information because it doesn't have that indicator. Even though I'm not consciously looking for that, it sticks out, right? Because it's different. It's so in criminal psychology, they have eyewitness testimony. And they ran an experiment where they had a guy walk into a bank with a briefcase, and then he walked out, and then they had people in the bank try to describe him. And they really struggled to remember and describe what that man looked like. The next day, they had the man go in carrying a pink flamingo lawn ornament. Goes into the bank with the pink flamingo, and he does his business, and he leaves. And people were much, much better able to describe that man because he stood out, because it was very different, right? And search results very much work in the same way. If I'm not seeing that .ca all of a sudden, I maybe have never noticed it before. But if all of a sudden it's missing, you can guarantee that that's going to stick out.
There's so much of interesting stuff to talk about here. I'm so sad that we have only 1 hour, which already has gone to an end. I just want to remind you that if you are into donating for small cat and dog shelters, you can do that anytime, not necessarily throughout this webinar. You can continue doing this after this webinar anytime. You're welcome to do that. And if you don't want to, you can just share this webinar, because more people see it, more people are likely to engage with us and to share and donate and whatever else. So thank you so much, Angie.
Thank you
I loved your
so
session.
much for having me.
Thank you, Anton, for organizing this. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for donating, and bye.